Hello and welcome to New Earth Podcast. I have with me today the lovely June Tranmer, and she is the People's Health Alliance Children's Ambassador. So welcome, June. Really delighted to have you on the podcast today.
Lovely to be here. It seems a bit strange to have a grandmother be the children's ambassador, and I'm hoping that we will attract a range of younger people who will share that role with me, because I think we want very much to have their views of what they would like to see the world to be in the future. We're very concerned, our generation and your generation, because you're probably the same age as my kids about, and I think the younger ones really have very clear ideas, I think, about what they would like to see happening, and we need to be listening to them very definitely. So that's why when Catherine asked me to be the children's ambassador because of my work with children, I was thrilled. I was very honored, and it's an illustrious group of people in that ambassadors team now. I mean, I just feel like, wow, there's some excellent people. Nikita Stark has become a dear friend of mine. She runs When Push Comes to Shove, and it's a training course for doulas, but it's also supporting parents to be. And she's just so brave and fierce in her defense of women's right to birth where and when and how they want. And she's fantastic. She's an ambassador as well, and I've done her training as a doula as well, because my journey started with kinesiology first, touch health, because of wanting to help my family when they were little in the 80s, and then I wanted to help other people help their children, and that's where it's come from. And I mean, one of the main philosophies in touch health is self-responsibility. So I've been kind of waiting for this to become a wider mantra, if you like. And it is very much one of the mantras of the People's Health Alliance. Just to help people, empower people to take back control of their own health and to feel that they understand their own bodies properly. So it's a fantastic opportunity to be a part of this wider group.
So a lot of people, a lot of my viewers at home might not know what the People's Health Alliance is, and what it's all about. And obviously you're a children's ambassador, and we can talk about your role, but I think it would be really helpful just to talk a little bit about, what the PHA is, the People's Health Alliance, and how it was set up. I know it was formed earlier on this year, so it's been quite incredible, the growth and the impact it's having internationally, has been so powerful. So I wondered if you could just share a little bit about that.
Well, certainly. I mean, at the beginning of this year, it certainly seemed to be a moment when a spark was lit, and it just went like wildfire. The subtitle of the People's Health Alliance is "By the People, for the People," which, as a Canadian, it sounds very American to me, but that's okay, because I have lots of lovely friends who are American. But it's absolutely about that. It's building something that is going to help people, like I said, take back control of their health, feel empowered, come together, creating hubs in your own local area with practitioners of all varieties, all kinds of health professionals, but not only that, just people who are concerned about health, and hopefully provide. I mean, my own hub is opening on the 6th of January. So this is terribly exciting, but we're only going to be open one day a week because we're trying to not overstretch ourselves. Others have been open a little bit, but this whole idea began fermenting in people a couple of years ago, really, and maybe even before that, of having this kind of, well, I don't want to brag or boast or make it sound grander than it is, because it isn't, but it's an alternative health service, basically. It's something that is going to provide what our current, in the UK anyway, our current health service is not providing. Some areas have been very good at integrating complementary, alternative, holistic health with the regular medical model. So I know stories of all around the country where people have been able to work alongside each other and have respect for each other. And that's the important thing, is that we dovetail, medical people and surgeons. I mean, I have such awe for them of the things that they can achieve. But we have got many other skills, as an acupuncturist and a kinesiologist and someone who's been in the alternative world, if you like, for 40 years. I feel like we deserve to be heard. And that's what I love about the PHA. It's giving us a platform and a place as a collective to raise our profile, raise our voices, and say, hey, we're all properly professionally trained. We're all, registered. We're all insured. We're all safe and effective. Dare I use that phrase? We have got a history of doing good things, especially Chinese medicine, thousands of years of good work, but it keeps adapting, keeps changing. And the things that I share with people, in my self-care tips and in my workshops, are very much based on new ideas as well as older ones. So kinesiology appeared, and it kind of merged the understanding of the Chinese medicine with the Western chiropractic knowledge of the structure of the body. So, where Western medicine goes deep into the details of things, we take that bigger picture and we look at the person's environment. We look at, their relationships. We look at everything, and where they specialize, which is fantastic. We are more general, but we do specialize in particular areas. And that's why I got interested in working with children, largely because my children were my inspiration in the first place and were my guinea pigs, bless them. But yeah, and now I'm doing the meridian brush with my granddaughter. That is something that is really useful. And the emotional stress release thing, I tell everybody about that. There's these 2 points, acupuncture points, halfway between your eyebrows and your hairline. And if you hold them very, very lightly with minimal pressure, no pressure really at all, just there, you can really release stressy thoughts, anxieties, whereas headaches, you can, if you wait long enough, you can hold it up to 10 minutes. Sometimes you might feel there's a little bit of pressure coming, but you've got to wait until it finishes, because that's the tension bubbling up from the back of our brain. If we're in fight or flight, and let's say a lot of people probably have been in fight or flight for quite some time lately, and it's taken its toll. And particularly children. I do have children coming to me now who have been thrown a bit sideways, shall we say, by the changes that they've had to adapt to. Children are incredibly adaptable and resilient, but we can't assume that they're just going to do it by themselves. They do need a bit of support and care. So the emotional stress release is great. Sometimes you can do it as a surrogate. You can put one hand on your forehead, yourself crossing over both of them, and you can touch your child while they're sleeping and do this to soothe them if they're having nightmares or something. Not while they're in the middle of a nightmare. I wouldn't try that. I would do it once they get to sleep, to prevent the nightmares coming up. So yeah.
That's amazing, June. And there's so much that you've said there that I'd like to touch upon. But what I'm feeling and, what I'm hearing from what you've said is, very much an important part of what you're doing is based on self-responsibility, based on self-care. And, from my understanding of the People's Health Alliance, it's also very much, based on this idea of, people stepping up, taking responsibility, saying, hey, I want to take care of my own health. What can I do? But also, what's really beautiful is that other allopathic practitioners are coming together. So there's this sense of the grassroots movement of people coming together in self-responsibility. And this idea really of a tiered healthcare system, that's come from Chinese medicine, from the Orient, that in the Orient, they have this vision that's much more based on, everyone knows a few acupuncture points, perhaps knows a few herbs. Grandmothers perhaps know how to make, a stew if there's digestive issues, this sort of thing. So it's really beautiful. There's this idea of self-responsibility, and it's only really if kind of the grandmother and the knowledge in the community fails that we go to the doctor. So there's this kind of tiered approach that's very, very powerful. And from what I see with the PHA, but also, with the work you're doing, it's about that self-responsibility so that we can start to create those stepping stones and, really find the resources in our community. So I was just interested to hear, because you mentioned self-care, what you're doing with regard to self-care, because I know that you work with Touch for Health and kinesiology. Just be really interested to hear about what you're doing.
Yeah, well, like I said, I do teach people, and the little videos are on my Telegram channel. I haven't got too many videos on my website, but and I put them on my Instagram as well, and my Facebook and LinkedIn, and a bit on Twitter, although not quite so much because it's very limited the amount of words you can put on Twitter, and it gets very tiresome. If you write a long thing, you keep cutting and pasting.
So perhaps we can put under the video for anyone that's interested, if you let me know your different, where you're giving the different platforms that you're giving the self-care tips, so that families can access these resources and empower them.
Yes, because it helps people to see someone doing it. I've got a video of myself running it's just not running every individual meridian, because there are, as you probably know, 14 of those, but it's running the same meridians that are in the same location, going the same direction at the same time. And that's perfect for kids. They love it. My granddaughter stands there like this, and she just lets me run her arms and legs and stuff like this. My kids, I used to do it for them when they went to school. And a lady has responded. We do this thing called Wednesday Well-Beings. Wednesday Well-Being.
That's in the PHA. Yeah, fabulous.
It's very early in the morning. It's 7:30 UK time, but we do record it, and they're all saved on the People's Podcast on Rumble, so you can find them all there. I can put a link for that too.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about what that is? The People's
the Wednesday Wellbeing Group.
Yeah.
It's a team of people. At this current point in time, there's only about 7 of us. One does Qigong, one does yoga, one does EFT and coaching. Well, there's 2 EFT people, and another one does meditation and mindfulness, and I do my things. And yeah, what a lady wrote in, and she said she was using the Meridian brush with her daughter, her 7-year-old, and her daughter wanted to do it for her friend. So that's how it spreads. And I just love that. Beautiful. That really makes me so happy.
That's beautiful. And if we can get the children, seeing these kind of things as normal, then, then that's a really strong way to build it into our community and into our awareness, because we just haven't had that awareness. We've been brought up very much with the awareness, if you're unwell, you go to the doctor. So it's a case of, how can we start to change those mindsets that it's obviously we need to go to the doctor if we need an operation or surgery or something like that, but there's so much we can do at home to support our community.
Well, yes, and in my training we were always taught that if you see something that seems more serious, then you have to recommend that people go and get some kind of a test to find out what's really going on. But I think I have a patient who's a radiographer, and she says that people are using too many tests, really. And she notices this. People are relying on testing so much instead of listening to themselves. And I think that's just something that people really need to think. Do I need a test? What is my body trying to tell me? With the kinesiology, you can ask the body questions. And like you say, you see this. People are turning to each other on social media, asking each other for tips and advice. that was like they used to do in the old villages. People used to share. And it's none of those people are necessarily professionals. And I'm always going, yes, but if you need to have a proper diagnosis, you want to go and see a professional person. But in China, it's integrated. Well, I've not been to China, but my friends say that, you know, they've gone to, and in the hospital, you've got Chinese medicine, you've got Qigong, you've got cupping, you've got moxibustion, you've got everything. You've got acupuncture sections in the hospital and next to all
Absolutely.
the other stuff.
And that's, I mean, we would never suggest that you wouldn't sort of seek medical care when you need it. You know, it's not an either or. It's that's what interests me. And what interests me about the PHA is that this integrated approach. And, you know, in terms of the self-care, you know, we've, like you say, we've lost that knowledge within our communities, but we've also lost that ability to really listen to ourselves and really kind of have that knowing of, you know, when something's not feeling so right in our bodies, so that we can catch things at an earlier stage. So, you know, certainly I work with self-care as well, and certainly a lot of it is about bringing back that connection with our organs, you know, so that we can start to feel into the organs which, you know, run the meridian. So basically we're giving ourselves, if we can get our organs in balance, then we're giving ourselves the top head to toe balance, you know, so it's very, very
Well, precisely. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And I think that the people that are so like, I must soldier on. I must soldier on. I've got to carry on. I've got to be brave. I don't admit that I'm ill, and I can't let people see that I'm weak. And that's just, we've got to get away from that, because people do that and then they go off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's sick days from work because it takes them ages to recover. And we've been doing work in my little clinic in York for a number of years now, going to businesses and helping people just have a little bit of support and relief, mini massages, whatever. If they do that on a regular basis, it helps them so much. It only needs to be simple things. But if you do the simple things on a regular basis, hopefully you will prevent the bigger things happening and you won't go falling off cliffs, because that's no good. There's a little saying in my Touch for Health book that I came from I don't know where, and it's the story of the ambulance in the valley. And basically, don't wait for the ambulance to come and rescue you once you've fallen off. Stay on the top of the cliff and enjoy the view and stay well, so you don't have to be rescued. You know, that's the
That's
thing.
this self-responsibility again, coming back to that. And
Mm.
certainly, I mean, I don't know about the, you know, the self-care routine that you work with, but certainly the one that I work with, it takes about 3 minutes each day. So it's accessible, you know, and I think that's the key. It's like, because we all have really busy lives, you know, stressful lives. So if you're asking someone to do an hour-long meditation or whatever, the chances are it won't happen. But if we can all manage, you know, take it, you know, valuing ourselves enough to do a 3 minute routine or 10-minute routine.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if it was Deepak Chopra or it was Thich Nhat Hanh, but one of those very wise fellows said, take a minute,
Mm-hmm.
1 minute to be still. How many of us are still for even a minute in our lives and just listen to our breath? And when we stop doing one thing, before we move on to the next thing, take a breath, feel your feet, ground yourself. I do a lot of that, trying to ground myself because I live in a city. I don't get on the earth unless I deliberately go and do it. And definitely pulling your ears for keeping your energy up. That's another one of my things that I do every day. I do the balancing. It's all in my self-care tips. I think the balancing with the side to side, top to bottom, back to front, running my meridians, doing my cross crawl. I love cross crawl. And qigong. Oh, qigong is so good. It's so good. The deep
People at
breathing.
home can look all this up and really get the tips from you on how to manage their health, you know, and take responsibility at home. That's
Yes,
incredible.
it's particularly focused. That list, I made it a couple of years ago, when people were, you know, beginning to get more worried than usual about flus. And I thought, well, okay, we've got all these things that people can use. If they're starting to feel a little bit ill, you know, it's got garlic and ginger tea, got Chinese cough syrup, it's got elderberry syrup, it's got, all of the things, except it might have colloidal silver in it, but there are more. I mean, I don't claim to, it started with 10, then it grew and it grew and it grew. And over the last 2 years, it's gotten to 26 things now.
Amazing, June.
Yeah.
So this is such an amazing resource for people. Are you happy for people to contact you? I think we're going to put your website and possibly your email. You're happy for people to contact you and request?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no problem. I do run online self-care workshops. I do the children's well-being one, and then I do one with just the basic, touch for health things. So yes, and I think it's good to have that as a resource for people. Those are not free. I only charge a little bit though, and then I do the full training in York here for people who want to learn muscle testing, but I don't expect people to travel wide distances for that. There are other teachers all around the world. There are Touch for Health people everywhere.
Amazing. So I'd just like to touch a little bit on, the work that you're personally doing for the PHA, because obviously you're the children's ambassador. And I know working with children is slightly different, to working with adults. And, I know you've got a lot, I think it's like 35 years plus years in experience working with pediatrics. So I'm just interested to know what pediatrics means for you and how you feel working with children is perhaps different to working with adults.
Yes, absolutely. That's really important. I have been teaching other acupuncture colleagues the things that I've learned over the years, because I trained with a very wise teacher. After I finished my basic training, I went straight into doing pediatrics. And the thing is that people don't know. I know this has become a thing that some American politicians said, and it's become a bit of a weird thing to say, but you don't know what you don't know. There's things that we don't know, and we possibly need to know. And children are not little adults. They have very different ailments that they get. They get ill more quickly and possibly sometimes more dramatically, which frightens parents. So I see part of my job is reassuring parents and teaching the parents what to do to keep themselves calm in order to keep the child calm.
Yeah.
Because a lot of health anxiety starts at childhood. If a child has parents around that panic every time somebody gets ill, then what you end up with somebody feeling, okay, this is what you do when you get ill, you panic. And if people can only take away one thing, is to just stop and go, okay, this is interesting. What is happening and what do I need to do? Because running around flapping your arms and hyperventilating is not helping anything. Your brain doesn't work properly. So this is why the holding the forehead really helps. If you feel you're starting to get a little bit anxious about something, just take a breath. It's not going to, obviously there are things, if somebody's having an asthma attack, you can't stand there and hold your forehead. You need to take action. Okay, so that's one thing. But if somebody's having something that's coming up that feels like it's going to be potentially life-threatening, because we don't know. We don't know. Sometimes things can take a sudden turn. And like I said, children get ill quite dramatically, quite quickly. But if we can just take a moment and pause and go, what do I know? What can I do to help them right now? And then we'll look for help at the same time. Try and do both those things. So yeah, and they do get better quicker too, usually.
Yeah.
That's the good thing.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I love that takeaway of just taking the moment, obviously, if it's not an emergency situation, just to hold the forehead, and because then that's reflected to the child. And my understanding is that particularly in children under 7, that a lot of childhood illnesses actually relate to what's going on in the parents. So if we're flapping and all the rest of it, which is totally understandable, obviously, because it's very distressing sometimes to see our children suffering. the potential for them to be doing better is increased if we can just take that moment and be
If we
calm.
can radiate faith, hope, and optimism to them rather than
Absolutely.
doom and gloom and panic scenarios, we want to lift them into that way of looking at life. It's when they start out their life. I mean, Nikita will say this: peace on earth begins at birth. That's her little
Right.
slogan.
Yes,
And
beautiful.
it starts there, the very first breath. And I've assisted at a few births already in my career, and now I've added doula training to that as well. And I just think it's so important to keep a mom calm while she's birthing and keep the baby calm coming into the world. That's such a great start because it's not a medical condition. It's a natural process. And then, like you say, if you see somebody fretting, then it's going to say, okay, well, I have to fret now, don't I? I don't need to. But the thing is, we can have confidence that our bodies do know, and they're always trying to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
This is
That
the point.
potential for healing that we all have, that we've all forgotten about, if we cut ourselves, the body knows exactly what to do. We don't need to learn that. We have that natural healing ability, so we can restore that ability, particularly if we come out of that stress mode.
Well, exactly. And so many times people getting ill is of the body trying to heal itself. That's something very important to remember. A
Yes,
cough and a cold and the flu is a cleansing process. And
absolutely.
I want people to understand, this is something we didn't talk about before, but I want people to understand that I've got books here piled around me, but there's so many books, and I could put references in if you like, um, about the germ theory and the terrain
Yes,
philosophy, rather, because I think if we get that under our belts and into our heads, that being ill is not a crisis unless we mismanage it. If we
yes,
manage it properly, being ill, having a fever can be a way of clearing stuff out of the system. Obviously, we don't want to just stand by and just let it, roll away and ignore it. But there are things we can do to help it move along instead of suppressing it. We don't want to suppress fevers. We don't want to suppress coughs. Stuff has to come out.
absolutely. And I think that's part of the problems when we start suppressing it, from a Chinese medicine point of view. We then get old flus stuck in our system, that are just, weaken the terrain, because they're all in there kind of causing havoc, as it were.
Well, it's a stream. If you keep throwing stuff into a stream, you get an accumulation of junk. And
Absolutely.
and if the stream is going to run smoothly and clearly, you have to give it time to do that clearing out, and then the junk ends up in the ocean. I don't want to take that analogy too far, but if you use biodynamic junk, then it will dissolve and it will go back to the earth. But plastic, on the other hand, although I hear there are worms and things that will eat plastic. There are bugs that will eat plastic. It's amazing. But the kids will clear themselves. That's right. And if you don't let them do that, then you have that, like you say, lingering pathogens, we call them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you get the medication on top of it, and then you get another bug, and then you get another bug, trying to clear the whole time. And it's just accumulation. And then of course that interferes with the running of the whole system.
And certainly the analogy that I use, and I would imagine you'd use a certain similar analogy, is I liken it when I'm working with clients to like the onion and peeling away the layers, so we can get to the root cause. And it's like a clearing out of the system instead of the drunk in, pushing it down, suppressing the symptoms. It's getting to the root cause. And I'm sure you probably work in a similar
Oh,
way.
exactly. It's always important to take a full case and understand someone's life and what has happened to them and what might be in those layers. But that's the beauty with children. They don't have that many layers.
Absolutely.
And
And
you
I like
can get to the root of things very
really
quickly,
quickly.
usually.
And I mean, I find, working with children is similar to working with animals in that way. They don't have those layers of conditioning or those beliefs, that also can, if we have a certain diagnosis, that's it kind of thing. They don't have all that on top of them. So they can often clear things very powerfully and quickly. I'd like to backtrack as we're talking about children a little bit more, just to what you mentioned earlier about Nikita and peace begins at birth. And I totally kind of relate to that and the importance of how, having a good birth, not having the birth trauma, if we can help it. Obviously, sometimes this, medical intervention is necessary, and that's how it is. But if we can, having that good birth and how that then sets up the children. I'm also interested in backtracking a little bit further than that, because my understanding is it's not just the birth, it's what happens in the womb, because
yes.
the brain's developing and or the environment in the womb, but also, from a Chinese medicine point of view, the health of the parents, before the child is conceived. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. That indeed is something that's very, very important to me as well. I do work with women who are trying to conceive, and have done for a number of years. And it's kind of hard when we are relegated to the adjunctive therapy alongside assisted reproductive technology, because we are limited to just doing before the egg transfer and after the egg transfer, and that's kind of it. Whereas with looking at pregnancy, we're looking at tonifying the woman, tonifying the dad too. That's so important, making sure. I mean, we talk about the kidney jing, the kidney deposit account that happens for the child when they're conceived. And that is set. That's it. You don't get any extra there. That's it. Whatever your parents have got to give you when you're conceived, that's settled. However, you've got your other kidney energy that can be nourished or depleted very quickly and very easily by your environment, your food you eat. And we do talk a lot, don't we, in Chinese medicine terms about food energetics, so important. And this is just to digress a little tiny bit here. This is what's so interesting. By talking to families who understand that as part of their culture, I've had a number of people come into my clinic from a family that has cherished that, and they understand hot and cold types of foods, damp producing foods, damp reducing foods. Now that's one thing that's very high on my agenda with children.
Absolutely.
Is the dampness, and feeding an expectant mom properly as well, and nurturing that blood tonifying foods, energy moving foods, so that her emotions are steady. I mean, that is so important. We know that there's a meridian that goes between the heart and the womb. And so, and the mother's voice is always being listened to by the child. Her heartbeat is being listened to by the child and felt by the child. And it's just such a special time. And I love nurturing pregnant women because it's just such a good start for that baby. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, really, really powerful stuff. And how do you see the first 7 years of life? Because I understand those are also as being really key, with the brain developing quite significantly during those years.
Well, and the meridians, they don't fall into their streams until they're about 7. They're doing such a lot of growing in that time. My children went to a Steiner school, so I have studied a bit of anthroposophical, that's a hard word to say, anthroposophical medicine, and the philosophy about the development of children. And there are these gateways that children go through: the first teeth, the terrible twos, that transition phase. There's then the 7-year-old. That's when the next teeth are coming in. Usually, that's when a lot of children start their education around the world. Not in England so much; they start way earlier, but that's another thing.
I know in
And
Steiner that's when they feel that children should start education, you know, at
when they're
age
really
7. They
ready to
believe
sit
it's not.
down and apply their brains, whereas
Yeah,
up until then, they're meant to be exploring their world. They're meant
yes,
to be playing, discovering nature, discovering each other, just feeling into their bodies, just getting incarnated properly as a spiritual being. They're taking up residence in this physical body, and they have to get to know it. So that's really important. And then you get to the age of 9, where they're crossing this Rubicon, they call it. And that's when the child really realizes that their parents don't know everything. Some kids figure this out sooner, but but definitely by the time they're 9, they're like, nope, I'm sorry, I'm listening to my friends.
I've got a 9-year-old at the moment, so I'm not even going to comment on that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's sounding very familiar.
Yeah, well, and then there's the 14-year-old thing. I mean, myself and my daughter, we properly fell out when she was 14, but
Okay.
we're the best of friends now, because 14, they have to, particularly with girls, they have to find their own identity, and they've got to have this kind of really strong separation from their mothers. Otherwise, they never figure out who they are.
Okay.
And it was hard, but we had to do it. And we didn't become estranged or anything, but we had plenty of clashes where she was
Yeah.
asserting her will. And that's what's happening at the 2-year-old time as well. They have to get a grasp of their will. And there's things about the 5 elements. I mean, there's so many forces at play. There's different changes according to the 5 elements, and then there's different children having different constitutions
Yeah.
within the 5 elements. So I've got a fantastic picture that one of my students embellished of the different characters of those five types of children. But we should avoid putting people in boxes. That's very important.
Yes.
Um, Nobody is just one type.
Of
We are
course.
all potentially including all 5 all the time,
Yeah.
but
Everything.
we have a
Yeah.
preponderance of one or the other at different
Yes.
times.
Thank you. And thank you for the heads up. My daughter is 14 in February. So I'm really happy that you've kind of given me that warning, though I don't want
Give her
to.
some space.
I
Give her
don't want
some
to
space.
manifest it by, I'll
No.
keep open the possibility that we might sort of continue in a positive way.
Well,
But,
absolutely. I'm
yeah,
sure you will. I'm sure you will. I think, she's just going to need some space. That's all,
yes, yes,
to develop her own identity, and I'm sure she'll do
absolutely,
that. Yeah.
absolutely. So one of the other things I was really keen to talk with you about, June, was, because we've talked about how you're PHA Children's Ambassador, but my understanding of the PHA is that it's all about, they have sort of international people and ambassadors like yourself, but the real emphasis is on developing hubs in the local community. And I understand that you're supporting developing the local hubs, for children, and giving children a voice, and looking for children ambassadors so that children can be heard as well. And I just wondered if you can speak a little bit about where that is at. And, for anyone at home that is perhaps a child, that would like to have a voice, perhaps they can also get in contact with you, because I know
Oh,
very early stages.
absolutely. It would be great. I mean, we have got as well the newsletter that's coming out, and there's always one of my colleagues in the children's group. It's stuffed full of very experienced pediatric nurses, audiologists, chiropractors, osteopaths, a whole load of people doing many, many different jobs in their other lives. But a lot of the people who are working in a medical modality are now combining that with knowledge of some kind of complementary therapy, which is great. So we have this opportunity to write a small snippet for the newsletter every month we're doing. And it would be great to have some kids' voices in there as well. So that
Amazing.
that would be really welcomed. And what we're doing is we've written some guidelines of what we would like to see in all the hubs for kids,
Yes.
because of our experience. But obviously, we don't know everything, but there's still stuff we don't know. I have to, I apply that rule to myself, as well as suggesting other people might not know everything. And so we do want to have a very safe place for young people to come, that they're not overshadowed by the adults in the room, as it were, so that they feel that it belongs to them. And it's someplace, I mean, in my hometown here, yeah, I call it my hometown because I've lived here for a very long time. There are many, many good people doing good things for children, and what we want to do in our thing in York, it's where I live. We want to be able to refer people, cross refer, and give people, information about signposting to other things. So that's also what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, this is the shift of New Earth. It's moving out of that mode of competition, and it's really into how can we support each other together. And for me, it's a very much a circular kind of model, which is the model that we have, in a lot of Indigenous cultures, of rather than hierarchical, where only the people at the top really have a voice. It's bringing this idea of every voice counts, everyone is valued, and so that encouraging everybody to step up and be heard and contribute.
Yes.
And I think that's absolutely fabulous, what you're doing for the children, because it's been such a difficult time for the children, these last few years, particularly teenagers. I can't imagine, what teenagers in lockdown would have been experiencing, when they were going perhaps through that phase of needing more independence, and they're stuck at home with mum kind of idea. Did you want to talk a little bit about that and what you're doing to support mental health for children?
Yeah, well, personally, I'm doing my best to work in all the other groups that I belong to in York, and trying to get the message out that we've got skills and things that can help. It's not just about counseling or medication, which has been the traditional way to treat mental disturbances, if mental disease, mental ill health, I don't know. Their words are so important, and we're doing round tables as well in the PHA with different specialisms. And Helen Gibson, who is chairing these round tables, she's very keen on making sure that we use clear language, and like you said before, it's about communication. It's about listening properly to everybody, and it's making sure that we don't label, like I said, not putting people in boxes. Mental health is now turning into mental well-being, and I think that's better.
Absolutely. I love
I
that.
think that's much better,
Yeah,
because mental health seems to imply that you need to be hospitalized. And
I love
sometimes
that.
people do need to go somewhere and have a rest. And, that's what a mental hospital should be, a retreat for people to escape for a while and just have some peace. And we did used to have a wonderful hospital here. I was just talking to somebody yesterday who used it for that very reason. When she was much younger, she said it was a great place to go. Sadly, we no longer have that hospital. But what we want to do is to make sure that we have people trained in all the hubs. And this is what Helen is doing now. She's cascading out this training, and it's called First Assist Being Well.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's a different, because there is mental health first aid, and that's a brand, if you like, and that's very good training in itself. But we wanted to have our own PHA focused, and it's First Assist Being Well. And so that's going to be in every hub that wants it.
Yeah. I love that reframing, and any stigmas attached to mental health, by this reframing, it's really in line with that vision of self-responsibility again, of let's all just take responsibility for how we are on a daily basis of our well-being, so it's I think
And I think for young people in schools, I mean, a lot of schools have now got a counselor or somebody, but I believe, this is my observation, that the young people have very real concerns that people are seeing, that they're going down the hall to see the counselor.
Yeah,
Whereas if they were going to somewhere like our hub, which has a wide variety of things and activities, qigong, tai chi, yoga, all that kind of stuff we're going to have,
yeah,
then there is no stigma attached. Everybody is improving their mental well-being.
I love
And
it.
it's not like you're the one that with the mental disturbances and everybody else is fine. That's not the case. Everybody, but everybody has got some kind of stress and anxiety at this point, I would feel.
I would think so. I mean, I heard an interview with a psychologist and who worked a lot with children, and she said that she would, if a child came in with severe anxiety, 3 or 4 years ago, she would like try and figure out what was going on. Whereas now she's much more worried about the children that come in and say they've got no anxiety and no, because it's showing a much more severe trauma, if they're not feeling any kind of anxiety at this time because of all the changes we've been going through as a collective. And I think that's probably true. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I would think that's probably true.
I think so. I think so. And I think sometimes people have got to put things away. I mean, we have this incredible ability to put things away until we're in a safe place where we can deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if people don't feel safe, they won't reveal their upset. Why would they? It doesn't make any sense to expose yourself to somebody that you don't entirely trust.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to gain trust. We have to.
Yes,
I said this to somebody who was booking their child in with me the other day. I said, I have to establish rapport. First and foremost, every time a child comes into me, I have to establish rapport with them, because why are they going to let me start massaging things on them? And,
absolutely.
and and I worry about the kids who are too compliant, because they're just letting whoever do whatever to them. And that's not bodily autonomy. That's not self-responsibility. I
Mm-hmm.
want them to be cautious, and I want them to ask questions, same as anybody would ask questions when they come to see me, because I think people need to feel trusting before they'll hand over any of their personal information.
Yeah, and I think as parents, there's a tendency that we can override our children's boundaries, and so I think if you're sort of role modeling that as a practitioner, then that's really, really powerful and important. I think you're doing incredible work, June, both locally and sort of, with PHA. And I just want to actually just do a bit of a shout out because I've been very much involved with sort of getting PHA going in Portugal. And I just want to sort of put out to anybody listening to this that's involved in the PHA Portugal group, perhaps they could get in contact with you or get in contact with me, because I would certainly, we haven't got this children's hub, children aspect, we're very much just starting up at the moment. But I just think this is absolutely key to start building this into our awareness and into what
Yes.
we're doing. So if anyone is interested in taking on that role within Portugal, then please either get in contact with me or June, and we can see what we can do to sort of make that happen. So
Certainly, that would be fabulous. I mean, we have got this Telegram group for the children's, teens and young adults concerned, people who are concerned about that field. But we also have the PHA website, which is PHA forums. I'll put that on as well, I think, because people can join a group where you can safely discuss things within a website, rather than, sometimes you're not quite sure who's joined a Telegram group. That's all I'll say. I
yeah,
mean, we like to trust everyone, but it's not as private as possibly on the website. So if people want
okay.
to come and join that, that's also true. Yeah. I mean, there are lovely doctors who have joined us from around the world in the ambassadors team. It's amazing. We've got some very special people that I'm very honored to sit amongst. Besides Nikita, we've got Dr. Sam White. We've got Dr. Dave Cartland, who's also in my children's group. We've got Dolores Cahill, Professor
Amazing,
Dolores Cahill. I'm so thrilled. And Jennifer Hibbard from Canada. We've got Kat Lindley from the United States, and we've got Maria Hubemog from I think that. Oh,
amazing.
and Foppe, he's fantastic. He's in Herefordshire, but he's originally from the Netherlands, and he is the spiritual ambassador. So, you know,
incredible work. It's just such a delight to be involved in, isn't it? And I just really encourage people, you know, if they haven't heard of the PHA, to look at the links under this video, and to stand up, get involved, because no contribution is too small. You know, it's very much hands-on kind of a thing.
Oh, it very much is. You don't have to feel you have to commit your life to it, although
No.
it can kind of take over a little bit if you're not careful. But just, you know, keep your own boundaries where you need to. There's also the People's Food and Farming Alliance, which, I mean, I haven't even touched on that, how important it is for children to have organic food, because the sprays that are going on to other forms of crops that are grown is just not doing them any good at all. I'm very, very concerned about, you know, environmental effects on children, which is another reason they have to keep getting ill, is to clear that stuff out.
Well, I think I will try and in another podcast get someone in that can talk about all that kind of side of things as well. We're going to need to draw it to a close today.
We could go on forever, couldn't we?
I know, well, that's the thing when we get chatty. It's just been such a delight to connect with you, June. And it's just, I mean, that's the beauty of these podcasts. I just feel like lots of new friendships are forming, which is just amazing. But I just wondered if you have any last thing that you'd like to kind of leave with, or any kind of tip that you'd like to share with our audience, you know, before we close off.
Okay, well, just love each other, I think, is the bottom line, isn't it? All of this is coming from our hearts. Everybody who's involved is working from their hearts. And this is the message for the new year. I think this is going to be an amazing year for everything. We're moving from, in Chinese medicine terms, from a metal phase. Well, it's still going on being metal for 12 years, but you know, in some respects, we're moving from water to wood, and we've got all those other elements grounding us. The wood is the community. Wood is nurture. Water is moving through things. We've been in a year of the water tiger. I don't know what's coming next, actually, in the Chinese New Year, but water actually has the ability to break things down, to plow through things. It's unstoppable. And so we need to consider that we are unstoppable.
Well, that's the power of the people, isn't it?
It is indeed.
It's like we are the people we've been waiting for. You know, it's
we
like
are the tigers. We are the water tigers.
Absolutely.
Yes. There we go.
Amazing. Well, that's a beautiful way to finish today. Thank you so much. And lovely to connect with you. Bye for now, everyone. Bye-bye.